A very good morning to everyone present here. We shall begin today's program with the Pondicherry University anthem. I request everyone to kindly stand up for the anthem. On behalf of the Department of Philosophy, Pondicherry University, I would now like to extend a warmly welcome to our guest of honor, Dr. G. Vasanthi, Dean, School of Humanities. I would also like to extend this welcome to our respected head of the department, Dr. S. Indra, respected Father N. Jonas, Escandate Chair in Asian Christian Studies, Professor Velu Murugan, faculty members Dr. N. Bobby, Dr. Mubashir and Dr. Rakesh, research scholars and dear students. I warmly welcome you all for today's invited lecture. We are deeply grateful to the Indian Council of Philosophical Research for sponsoring this academic interaction. Also, we are grateful to our speaker today on accepting our invitation on such a short notice. Thank you, sir. Today's lecture, titled Snakes and Ladder, K.C. Bhattacharya on Freedom, promises to offer us interesting reflections on Indian philosophical thought, particularly on the conception.
Before starting the program, we would like to honor Professor through our Dean, a small token of. Very happy to honor
It's now my privilege to welcome our distinguished speaker, Professor Daniel Raveh from Tel Aviv University, Israel. Professor Raveh is a renowned scholar whose work bridges Indian philosophy and comparative thought. His scholarship reflects deep engagement with classical Indian texts and modern philosophical debates. We are truly privileged to have you with us today. I would now request our respected Dean, Professor Vasanthi Ma'am, to address the gathering and share a few words.
Please be seated, sir. Good morning to one and all here. I'm really happy to be here today because this is the first program I'm attending for your department after taking the deanship. And I'm really happy that a very good program has been organized related to the lecture series which has been done earlier also, I heard. And really, sir, it is a great pleasure for our university, and it is an honor for a university for having you as a lecture series program here. And one more thing I would wish to say that the students know it is for the benefits of the students, the department is organizing this program. So I wish that all the students engage yourself for all these lecture series and attend this program, so that it is not only a benefit for the university, it is a credit for the university. At the same time, you can get a lot of academic knowledge with the various lectures given by the experts. So now with this short information, I would like to hand over the mic to our guest. Thank you, sir.
I now call upon our head of department for the keynote address.
Can you hold it? Good morning, everybody present here. I welcome all of you to the second phase of lecture series sponsored by ICPR. And the topic for today's lecture is from the concept of the freedom according to the K.C. Bhattacharya perspective. And he was one of the prominent and the significant contemporary Indian philosophers, and his works covers both Indian as well as the Western, I hope I'm audible, Western philosophical tradition, specifically on the philosophy of consciousness and philosophy of mind and the concept of subjectivity, metaphysics, and so on. So, today's coming to the today's topic on the concept of the freedom. Bhattacharya published in his seminal works the Swaraj in Ideas, where he introduced the notion of the intellectual independence, and he argued that Swaraj infers beyond the political independence, and there should be the intellectual freedom and intellectual identity to develop ideas and that are rooted in one's own culture as well as in the philosophical traditions. So the idea of intellectual autonomy had the profound impact in Indian philosophy and in culture and also in the cultural thought. And his emphasis on the intellectual autonomy and his interpretation of the philosophical traditions inspired a lot in the forthcoming generations also. With this short note, I request the professor to deliver the lecture. Thank you.
It's here. It's over. Hi, good morning. So it's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure for me. Can you hear me properly? In the back, sure. Okay. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I've been here in the past. Most of you were in high school or something when I was here. Yeah. So I was here at least 2 times in the past, and I thank, of course, Dr. Indira and the Dean for inviting me. And I'm also thankful to you for coming to listen. I don't want it to be a very formal lecture. You know, this ICPR formal lecture. I want to actually talk to you with the hope that maybe you can understand or maybe we can have a dialogue between us. So actually, when I corresponded with Dr. Indira, she wanted me to speak about K.C. Bhattacharya. And I wrote to her, this is a very complicated theme. But then she insisted, so I thought, okay, let's try to do something with K.C. Bhattacharya. The reason that I'm in Pondicherry, I didn't come to Pondicherry just to meet you. I'm working in Pondicherry in the Sri Aurobindo archive. I'm interested in contemporary Indian philosophy. When I'm talking about contemporary Indian philosophy, I mean 20th century Indian philosophy. I know that for many of you, 20th century sounds like prehistoric time. but it's not so far behind, right? So I'm interested in Kessi Bhattacharya, I'm interested in Shri Aurobindo. This is why I'm here at the archive of the ashram. And the reason that I'm interested in these two figures, two philosophers, there are more than philosophers, but I'm focusing on the philosophical aspect of Shri Aurobindo. I'm focusing on the philosophical aspect of Kessi Bhattacharya. Let's call him in short KCB, okay? So I'm interested in KCB and Shri Aurobindo because they have one foot deeply rooted in classical Indian texts, in Sanskrit texts, in the Veda, in the Upanishads, in commentaries, in the different darshanas, and the other foot is as deeply rooted in Western philosophy, in European philosophy, in Kant, in Hegel, in the European philosophy of their time, of course also in Greek philosophy. So there's a sense of fusion, there's a sense of dialogue in the way that they are doing philosophy. You have to tell me that you are okay so far. Are you okay so far? Dialogue, fusion between different cultures of philosophizing, between different cultures of thinking, between different languages, Sanskrit and European languages, and not only Sanskrit but different Indian languages. KCB was of course Bengali from Calcutta, so the Bengali language, and Shri Aurobindo, as you all know, taught himself different languages, also Bengali, but also some Tamil, Gujarati, Hindi. He was a man of many languages. So this traveling between languages, between ways of thinking, between ways of philosophizing is what attracts me to these figures. Maybe I should start also by telling you that part of my PhD, hundreds of years ago I did a PhD. I'm already an epic figure in my age. So part of my PhD was done in India, at the University of Rajasthan in Jaipur. I actually read a book by an Indian philosopher called Daya Krishna. I don't know if you heard of Daya Krishna. So I read a book in Tel Aviv. The name of the book is Indian Philosophy, a Counter Perspective. Indian Philosophy, a Counter Perspective. Now there's a website, because all of you are connected to the internet. There's a website which is called Daya Krishna, the Open Library. You just write Daya Krishna in Google, and I think the first result will be Wikipedia, and the second result would be Daya Krishna, the Open Library. And on this website you will find all of his writings in English and also in Hindi. So you can find this book, Indian Philosophy, a Counter Perspective. And what attracted me to this book was the fact that he's reading a new classical Indian text in a new way. He wants to say something new about the classics. He's not reading classical Indian texts in a religious way. He has a lot of reverence, of course, to these texts, but he reads them as philosophy. And because you are so young, or because I'm so old, maybe you are not young, it's me that I'm old, so maybe it sounds natural to you that someone can read the Upanishads in a new way, or someone can read the Nagarjuna in a new way, or someone can read the Shankaracharya in a new way, or the Sankhya Karika or the Nyaya Sutra. But this was not done in India until the 1970s, 1980s. Who was doing it? I mean, the texts were considered as belonging to the Pandits. No one is entitled to touch the text if they are not Pandits. You want to touch the text, become a Pandit. Study 12 years in a Sanskrit university to become a Shastri in some discipline, and then you have the right to say something. So when someone like Daya Krishna started to write, so people said, but who are you to say something about Shankaracharya? Who are you to say something? And the same, by the way, with Shri Aurobindo. Shri Aurobindo was, of course, more rooted in the tradition. Of course, the same was with the Kessi Bhattacharya. People said, who are you people to read the classical texts, and not only to read the classical texts, but to read them vis-a-vis, opposite European texts. So now we are entering politics. And when I'm saying politics, I don't mean contemporary party politics. I'm talking about colonization. Someone like Shlomo Bindo, someone like Kessi Bhattacharya, this is the first half of the 20th century. Someone like Daya Krishna, this is the second half of the 20th century. How do they juggle? You know what is juggling? When you play with few physical education, when you play with few balls at the same time. It's not easy to juggle, by the way. The people that do juggling are practicing for years to be able to play with a few balls. So how do you play with the Indian balls? How do you play with the European balls? And someone like Kessi Bhattacharya, who's going to be the main person of my talk, Kessi Bhattacharya, most of his writings were not published in his lifetime because he was giving a commentary, a new commentary to old Indian texts. So people didn't want to see it. People said this belongs to the Pandits, as I told you. His own son, who published his work, Gopinath Bhattacharya, was very apologetic. He said, not everything that my father is writing is there in the texts. He's giving a new interpretation. A new interpretation sounded very risky because people thought that the new interpretation would be too westernized, tainted, or you know what is tainted? Tainted by colonialism. So this is one part of Kessi Bhattacharya's writing. This is one part of Shlomo Bindo's writing. Shlomo Bindo, who is going back to the Veda. People said, how can you go back to the Veda? Shlomo Bindo said there is philosophy in the Veda. People said there is no philosophy. At the time, people thought that there is no philosophy in the Veda, that the Veda is only religious, that the Veda is only for the ritual. And he was trying to find in the Veda itself, this is Shlomo Bindo, strands of philosophy. And on the other hand, Kessi Bhattacharya was reading Kant and Hegel and criticizing them and offering solutions to problems that he saw in their texts. So people said, how come an Indian can offer a commentary to Kant and Hegel? This is unheard of. And he was writing, of course, in the first half of the 20th century during colonialism. How can I want to be more brutal, how can the sheep, you know what a sheep is? I mean, I don't know Tamil, I know only Hindi. How can a bakra, how can a sheep criticize the shepherd? This is what people said when Kessi Bhattacharya was writing on Kant and Hegel. So these writings were not published in his lifetime. They were only published in the 1950s. After he passed away in 1949, just briefly after the independence. And Shlomo Bindo, probably you know, also passed away more or less at the same time. In 1950, they were contemporaries. So I'm interested in both sides of the coin, in their new reading of classical texts, and also I'm interested in their quote-unquote Indian critique of European philosophy. So are you fine with this introduction? Okay. Now I'm really going to enter Kessi Bhattacharya, and it's going to be very difficult, but let's see if you can follow. But before I start, I titled the lecture Snakes and Ladders, KCB, Kessi Bhattacharya, Krishna Chandra Bhattacharya, Snakes and Ladders, KCB on freedom. So I don't know if you know this game, Snakes and Ladders. Do you know the game? Yes. It's a box game that basically you climb the ladders, and if you are unlucky, where is lucky? If you are unlucky, you slide down with the snake. So basically for Kessi Bhattacharya, trying to be deep, to get deeper. Philosophy. Do you know what philosophy is? That's a tricky question. Philosophy is deep reflection about depth. How come you're giving this definition? Why not? I can give different definitions. Philosophy is deep reflection about depth. Because we live on the surface. So to get deeper is not an easy thing, and many people don't want to. It's dangerous to go deep. So when you go deep, it's like climbing on a ladder, but in between you can fall down on the snake. And as I was thinking about this title, I'm coming now from Calcutta. I'm coming from Kolkata, from Jadavpur University, and I went to a nearby gallery, an art gallery called Akar Prakar, a beautiful name. And in the art gallery, they were showing art by a Gujarati artist called Nagji Patel. Nagji Patel. And I'm starting this presentation with two works of Nagji Patel. Apropos my title, Snakes. And of course, Nagji, and the word Nag. So let's start with Nagji Patel and see the snakes that I'm going to, 1 minute, go back to the previous slide. I touched it, but it was my fault.
No, you can just slide it.
I can slide like this. So see the nag, see the snake on top of this, I don't know what, some kind of auto rickshaw. This is a tempo actually. If you want to go to Pondicherry, you can jump on a tempo, no? So, but see the snake, and I'll say something about snakes as we move on. And the next one, no. Oh, it's complicated. Maybe we can cancel this thing. So I move this way? Okay. So here again, because I thought maybe are you going to Calcutta this month to watch this exhibition? I didn't think so. So I thought I'll take another photo. So again, you can see a snake here. And as I will start to read to you something short that I wrote, Kessi Bhattacharya is giving a new interpretation to the old snake rope parable. You know the snake called the snake and rope parable that is used by the Buddhists. It is used by Advaita Vedanta. So the idea is that, you know, someone is going in twilight. You know what is twilight? When it is neither day nor night. Just when day is turning into night and you can't see so well, and he sees something and he believes, or she believes, that it's a snake, right? And then when you see a snake, of course you're afraid, etc., etc. But then this is the first stage. It is a snake. But then someone comes, or maybe you can understand yourself that it's not a snake, but it's a rope. It's not a snake, it's a rope. And according to the traditional text, according to Shankaracharya, in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, did you read the Brahma Sutra Bhashya? Did you read the introduction to the Brahma Sutra Bhashya? If you haven't, so take the encouragement of Kessi Bhattacharya and the encouragement of Sri Aurobindo and the encouragement of Daya Krishna and read the texts. Don't wait for someone to explain it to you. Now everything is so available on your phones, and you can read it in English translation, you can read it in Tamil translation, you can read it in any language that you want to read. So the first stage of the snake is real. The snake is real. I believe that the snake is real, right? The second stage of the snake is unreal. Someone is coming and whispering in my ear, it's not a snake, it's a rope. Right? It's not a snake, it's a rope. It's not a snake. Actually, in Sanskrit, it's the other way around. Rajur iyam. Raju is a rope, right? Rajur iyam. It's a rope. Na sarpa iti. It's not a sarpa. It's not a snake. So according to Shankaracharya, this is moksha. This is redemption. This is Yeshua. We spoke in Hebrew. But then Kessi Bhattacharya thinks, but what comes next? What is the next phase or the next stage? Someone told me it's a rope, it's not a snake, but then I still go home, or I go anywhere. I go to where are you going? To the hostel, with a snake imprinted in me, with an inner snake, with a snake that never existed externally, but is now part of who I am. So this internal snake, which I'm trying to, I will argue in a few minutes, that Kessi Bhattacharya is talking about internalizing colonialism. So this is for you, Ragesh. Political philosophy, internalized colonialism. And as you know, there are different types of colonialisms, even today, not only in the time of the British or the French. So I thought that Nagji Patel's work is symbolizing beautifully the inner snake, the snake that is part of our mind. This is why I'm starting with these two works of Nagji Patel. So now I just move like this.
Yes.
It's working. Okay. So in a second we'll come to this quote. So Keshe Bhattacharya is famous because of a talk that he gave in 1929 at the Hooghly College near Calcutta, and the title of this talk is Swaraj Ideas. And maybe you read Swaraj Ideas, and if you didn't read Swaraj Ideas, so you can read Swaraj Ideas. It's a talk that he gave to students. He was the principal of the college, and Swaraj Ideas became such a famous text. And so much is written and so much is spoken of Swaraj Ideas that I thought that I will talk to you about Swaraj Ideas through three other works of Keshe Bhattacharya. The crux of the matter, the heart of the matter, the point of the matter is that Keshe Bhattacharya is interested in how should I put it, in treating, in dealing with the inner snake. You understood what is the inner snake. Outer snakes are easy to handle. You can give a call to a I don't know, a snake catcher. He can catch the snake for you. Or you can run away, or you can make the snake run away. But what happens when the snake is inner? What happens when it is a psychological snake? Psychological snake. Psychological snake. You're enjoying your chai and too much, yeah. I'm talking to you about snakes, but you're enjoying the sugar of the chai. So in 1929, why did Keshe Bhattacharya give this talk Swaraj Ideas in 1929? No, it's okay. Let's have chai. So I'm trying to get you interested in a talk that was delivered in 1929, not far from here, not so far from here, near Calcutta. Why 1929? Because 1929 is 20 years to Hind Swaraj. Hind Swaraj, Gandhi, 1909. Did you read, by the way, Hind Swaraj? You didn't read Hind Swaraj. In which language was Hind Swaraj written? In which language? I'll give you a hint. I just showed you two works of art by a Gujarati artist. So Hind Swaraj was written by Gandhi in Gujarati, in his mother tongue. And it was written on a boat. He was returning to South Africa from England. And it was burning in him the idea of Swaraj, of freedom, of self-rule to India. And the story says that he wrote with his right hand, and when he got tired, he moved the pen to his left hand and he continued to write. And we have the manuscript, so we can see that there are two different handwritings. So 1909, Gandhi is thinking about political Swaraj for India. Not only political Swaraj, actually you should read Hind Swaraj. Again, it is available on your phones, and it's a short treatise. It's a short text. So Gandhi was fantasizing about South Indians learning Hindi and North Indians learning Tamil, and he writes in Hind Swaraj, if we do it, and also he said people should learn Sanskrit and Persian, and the Muslims should learn Hindi, the Hindus should learn Urdu. And he says, in a very short time, we will get rid of English. This he wrote in 1909. And 20 years later at the Hooghly College, Hind Swaraj was celebrated, and KCB was giving this talk, which he titled Swaraj Ideas. And the idea for him was that political Swaraj is not enough. What's the point of getting rid of the Britishers if we continue to be British? If the Britishism, can we say Britishism? If the Britishism is entering our mind. And now I don't know if people here out other than Ragesh, who is doing political philosophy, I don't know if you read the famous Minute on Education by Macaulay. Did you read the infamous Minute on Education by Macaulay? Did you hear the name Macaulay, by the way? Did you heard the name Macaulay? So Macaulay, who was in charge of education in India, by the way, for a very short time, for just a few years, he was sent to India. I don't know if you know that he was sent to India by John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill, besides being a philosopher, a moral philosopher of ethics. I mean, do you read John Stuart Mill? Do you have a canteen here? There's John in the Tel Aviv canteen in Amai University. Sometimes you can see in the canteen John Stuart Mill sitting with Kant, and each of them is giving his own. Come on, my jokes are not working in Pondicherry. So John Stuart Mill, besides being a moral philosopher, he was also a famous or infamous colonialist, and he's the person who sent Macaulay to India. I didn't know about it until recently. He worked 23 years in the East India Company, John Stuart Mill. He never visited India. He was based in England. So when Macaulay came, Macaulay published this famous short text about education in India, and he said we should make the Indians, if you didn't read it, so read it. It's your history. Your history is not only Veda and Upanishads. Unfortunately, your history is also Macaulay. And Macaulay said the Indians will remain brown. Always, for some reason, the color of the skin is important. They will remain brown, but their mind will become white. Their mind will become a European mind, Indian body, European mind. And he said we can achieve this in a very short time. And he said horrible things in this short piece that he published. He said one shelf of European books is more significant than everything that was ever written in Sanskrit and in Persian. Did he ever read anything in Sanskrit or Persian? The answer is, of course, not. So, but the arrogance of the colonizer. But the problem is, and he said, we cannot rule all the Indians. We cannot rule all the Indians, so we will create a new caste. Again, Ragesh, who is interested in caste, a new caste. A caste of English-speaking Indians. And this caste will enable us to rule the majority population of India. This is Macaulay. You are not shocked by this. You should make a noise. Something like, something like this. I mean, how could he say something like this? And the problem is, I started the sentence few sentences ago. I said that the problem is, and maybe you know what I'm going to say. The problem is that I'm not sure that Macaulay was not successful. Because really a new caste was made, and you know better than me the situation today. I'm more familiar with North India than with South India, but all these quote-unquote English medium schools. Everyone wants to send his kids to an English medium school. But are these really good schools, the so-called English medium schools? And the problem is that people are studying some kind of English, but they are losing part of their identity. And I don't want to sound to you like a preacher. You have a preacher sitting here before me. I'm not a preacher. I'm not telling you what does it mean to be Indian. You decide what it means to be Indian because you are Indian. But I think that to be a shadow of another culture is not really Indianness. And I'm coming to you, by the way, from Tel Aviv, from Israel. And I was just telling the head of the department and other friends that in Tel Aviv we teach everything in Hebrew. You can hear that English is not my first language. I teach philosophy in Hebrew. I fight sometimes with my friends in Hebrew. I fall in love in Hebrew. I dream in Hebrew. We do everything in Hebrew. So this quote-unquote burden of English is not really the question of a question is not really a question in Israel. My students, they cannot imagine to talk to one another in English or to have classes in English unless they study English literature, which is of course in English. So let me read to you part of what I write. I'm in search of Kessi Bhattacharya's Swarajian ideas in 3 other texts. Now I don't have the time to read to you the whole thing. I was interested in 3 texts by Kessi Bhattacharya. Or maybe I should have started even before that. Kessi Bhattacharya's work, KCB's work was published, I told you, in the 1950s by his eldest son Gopinath. So Gopinath published everything that his father wrote except for Swarajian ideas. Swarajian ideas, the manifesto of decolonization, the 1929 manifesto of decolonization was left out. Because Gopinath Bhattacharya was trying to make a distinction between politics in the sense of decolonization, and real philosophy, or proper philosophy. But again, Ragesh is sitting here, so you can talk to Ragesh later on, and Ragesh will tell you that the very act of philosophizing, the very act of thinking is a political act. And when I'm saying politics, I don't care about the different parties in Tamil Nadu, and I don't know much about the different parties. I mean, I only remember Jaya Lalita and Karunanidhi, but both of them are not here anymore, and I don't care about BJP and the Congress. I only care about MGR, of course, and this is why I'm wearing, of course, sunglasses wherever I go. But okay, suddenly I managed to catch your attention. So this distinction between politics and philosophy for me is not working, and therefore Swarajian ideas was not included in the collected writings of Kessi Bhattacharya. So what I'm doing in this paper, which I don't have time to read to you, is basically I'm trying to find the political strands, the political dimension of Kessi Bhattacharya in his other writings, basically to show that Swarajian ideas is not a separate work, but it echoes, it resonates in the other writings of Kessi Bhattacharya. So even if I don't have time to read it to you, so at least you know what I'm trying to do here. And I'm doing it through 3 works of Kessi Bhattacharya. One is a lecture that he gave in 1925. It's called Shankara's Doctrine of Maya. And this paper is analyzing the snake rope parable, and I will talk to you about this. This is the part of the paper that I will read to you. The second paper of Kessi Bhattacharya that I'm interested in is from 1936. It's called The Advaita and its Spiritual Significance. And maybe I'll say just a word about it later on if you will be interested, if I have time. And the third work by Kessi Bhattacharya that I'm analyzing in this paper is a series of lectures from 1937, and I'm mentioning the years to give you a picture of this philosopher. I said 1925, 1936, 1937, and the lectures given in 1937, the title is Studies in Sankhya Philosophy. I hope that you know something about classical Sankhya. So Kessi Bhattacharya is trying to give a twist, to add a twist to the Sankhya Karika. He's working as a commentator to the Sankhya Karika, and I'm suggesting that he's adding a political twist to the Sankhya Karika. Do you know anything about the Sankhya Karika? Did you read the Sankhya Karika? Do you know what is Sankhya? Do you know all these things? Or this strange guy from Israel is coming and asking you these strange questions. I'll give you the conclusion, the bottom line, and then I'll start to read to you. And if I continue to have so many introductions, probably I won't read anything to you. But the point I'm trying to suggest that there's a similar formula of freedom, similar formula of freedom in the classical text, which is called the Sankhya Karika, composed in India in Sanskrit in the 1st centuries AD, and in K.C. Bhattacharya's picture of freedom, which is given straightforwardly in Swarajian ideas, but also I'm suggesting in other texts. And the formula is, you know what is a formula? Similar model of freedom in classical Sankhya and in K.C. Bhattacharya, and the model is about rejecting foreign ideas. Rejecting foreign ideas that have already been internalized. Now the Sankhya, if you know anything about Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya is making a distinction between Purusha and Prakriti. Right? Prakriti is everything in the world, everything worldly. Prakriti is the garden, Prakriti is the chai that you are drinking. But of course it's easy to make a distinction between myself and the cup of chai. But Prakriti is also my body. Prakriti is also my mind. So the idea is to find a certain distance, a certain sense of apartness, of distinction between the real self and everything which is Prakriti, between the real self and my own mind, between the real self and my own emotions, between the real self and my own body. This is classical Sankhya. And this apartness or separation or distinction is called in Sanskrit what? It's called Kaivalya. Kaivalya, right? Aloneness, to be alone. And Kaivalya is the Kaivalya of Purusha, of the self, which is non-worldly from everything which is Prakriti. Becoming emptified. Can we say emptified in English? Becoming empty. The Sankhya is talking about the process of emptification. I'm becoming emptified of everything which is Prakriti. And what is the real self? This is a difficult question. I'm asking you difficult questions. The real self is not what is left when the process is over. I don't think that the process is ever over. I think that the very process itself, in the very process itself, you find freedom, you find moksha, you find kaivalya. By continuously understanding that every identification is voluntary and not compulsory. The identification with my body, the identification with my writing, the identification with my emotions. I think this is freedom in Sankhya philosophy. Becoming emptied of everything which is foreign to Purusha. Purusha is the quote-unquote real self. And when K.C. Bhattacharya writes or speaks Swarajian ideas, which later is written and becomes a famous manifesto of decolonization, again the same formula or the same model. The idea is to become, it's a process of becoming empty of foreign ideas, of foreign content. And the foreign content in Swarajian idea is not Prakriti. It's of course the European ideas or European way of thinking embedded in English that was brought to India. So this is my main claim. The same model of emptification in Swarajian ideas and in classical Sankhya, and K.C. Bhattacharya is connecting the two, connecting the classical notion of freedom with his first half of the 20th century model of freedom. Okay? More or less okay? Now the point is, because you haven't read K.C. Bhattacharya, you cannot object. And actually your job, what is the role of the students? To disagree with the teachers, right? So you have to disagree with me, but it's difficult at this point for you to disagree. So now let me read to you something, and then you will have the feeling that this ICPR lecture was a serious lecture. So I'm reading to you. Yes. So I wrote here the following. In the following paragraphs, I will share with you my thoughts on freedom according to Krishna Chandra Bhattacharya to KCB. Freedom which extends, I will argue, from the metaphysical to the political, namely freedom from colonialism, and primarily colonialism of the mind. Before I read to you my next line, colonialism is not over. There are different types of colonialism. Actually, you, more than me, are what? Are open to different types of manipulations through your phone, through different types of social media. More than me because I'm too old to be part of this. But these different type of manipulations, whether these are political manipulations, whether these are commercial manipulations, these are also types of colonialism. Colonialism in the sense that it wants to capture your mind. So when I'm reading K.C. Bhattacharya, I'm not just talking to you about Indian history 100 or something years ago. I'm talking to you about free thinking. And this is why this is, I think, relevant. It's not. I'm not just giving you a historical lecture. Yeah, you are already prone to manipulations through your phone, even as I'm talking about it here. So I already told you that Gopinath Bhattacharya did not include Swarajian ideas in the writings of KCB. And I already told you, but I'm writing here, the very act of philosophizing, of critical reflection, of asking questions, of broadening one's horizons is a political act. Okay, so let's start with Shankara's Doctrine of Maya, a paper that KCB not only wrote in 1925, but also presented in the first IPC, Indian Philosophical Congress, which was held in Calcutta in 1925. Imagine that you are back now in 1925, Calcutta, K.C. Bhattacharya and Rabindranath Tagore inaugurating the session, and KCB is reading this paper. So the very title I'm saying, Shankara's Doctrine of Maya, implies that KCB is interested, philosophically speaking, in Maya, not in the Brahman. You know what is Maya? Everyday life, not in Brahman, not in something which is above and beyond. It makes sense, I'm writing, since the Brahman is beyond the scope of thinking and speaking. Thinking and speaking. Brahman is the horizon, if you wish, pointed at by Wittgenstein's seventh proposition in his Tractatus Logico Philosophicus. Do you read the Wittgenstein, by the way?
Yes.
Did you read the Tractatus? You know that the Tractatus has 7 propositions, and the last one says what? The last one says, that which you cannot talk about, it's better to be silent about. So I'm saying the Brahman is Wittgenstein's 7th proposition. I wrote, and I just read to you, beyond the scope of thinking and speaking. I said that the Brahman is beyond the scope of thinking and speaking. Since KCB, in another essay called The Concept of Philosophy from 1936, makes an interesting distinction between these two, between thinking and speaking. Philosophy, according to K.C. Bhattacharya, is not thinking, but speaking. Thinking for him is empirical thinking. It is related to sense experience and characterizes science. Speaking, on the other hand, does not deal with facts and is not about the empirical. Are you following a distinction between thinking and speaking? For K.C. Bhattacharya, philosophy is speaking, not thinking, because thinking is only empirical. This distinction grounds KCB's conception of philosophy as different from science. Here I could add something about oral versus written philosophizing. Listen to me, 15-20 minutes, not more than this. I could say something about oral tradition versus writing and reading. Nowadays we only write and read, right? We cannot imagine philosophizing orally. And I don't know if you are very trained in listening without writing, without making a written version. So I could say something about this distinction, but I don't have time. And I could say something apropos the notion of shruti. Shruti, which is interesting both for KCB and for Shri Aurobindo. Apropos the notion of shruti, you know what is shruti? What is shruti? The Veda, the Upanishad, that which we hear, right? Which is not written, which comes from the ears. So apropos the notion of shruti, I could speak of the written text as restraining or even imprisoning the living spoken word. This is Shri Aurobindo, the living word against the written word. I could further add a present day remark. Do you want a present day remark? I could add a present day remark about the invasion of the machines into the written text. I don't know if you are using ChatGPT. I hope that if you are using, you are doing it smartly. So the invasion of the machines of the famous chat into the written text. But let's return to KCB. In the first paragraph of Shankara's Doctrine of Maya, KCB writes, and this is what is here on the screen. He writes, both Maya and Brahman are in fact to be accepted in faith and only interpreted by thought. For purposes of philosophy, we may generally substitute in place of faith in scriptures, spiritual experience, and in this connection, the feeling of vanity of life and the demand for absolute certitude. No, I want to bring it up a little bit, because you don't see the demand for absolute certitude. The word certitude is one line below. KCB, I'm writing, is doing phenomenology. Do you know what phenomenology is? He's doing phenomenology. He translates Maya and Brahman from faith into experience, which is twofold. The feeling of the vanity of life and the demand for absolute certitude, namely the recognition of Maya as such and the aspiration for Brahman. The doctrine of Maya, he continues to write, may be regarded as the conceptual formulation of this feeling and demand. So he's taking these two big concepts of classical Indian philosophy, Maya and Brahman, and he speaks about feeling and about demand. Feeling and demand. I will explain shortly before your patience ends, I hope. How much time do I still have? When do we finish? Half an hour. Do you have patience for another half an hour? Yes. But in India you are doing this. For us, this is no. Yes, no. Okay, let's go. Let's continue a little bit. So he's translating Maya and Brahman to feeling and demand. He further asks about Maya, Shankara's concept of Maya. Does the lapse of value, when one realizes that what appears before our eyes is just Maya, is just an illusion, does the lapse of value, when one realizes that it is just Maya, means lapse of reality? And offers this answer: if the value of an object lapses to our consciousness, the given form of the object, it may be said, need not disappear or change into some other form. And a few lines later he adds, the lapse of value does not mean the lapse of all givenness. Now I don't know if you are following, but the idea is, when I understand that everything is just Maya, Maya is illusion, right? But illusion not in the sense of something that does not exist. Of course this exists. You just drank your chai. You just ate whatever you have eaten, water. Of course this exists. So the idea is that Maya is illusion in the sense that it does not fully exist, and does not fully not exist. It is something in between existence and not existence, right? This is Maya, the in-betweenness between existence and non-existence. Whereas Shanta Kumari to teach you Shankaracharya? Shankaracharya says the only thing that is absolutely sat, existing, is Brahman. And then he creates the opposite category of asat. What is asat? Non-existence. Non-existence is the son of how do you say it in English? The son of a woman that cannot have children. What?
Son of a barren woman.
I can't hear you.
A barren woman.
Barren woman. The son of a barren woman is Shankara's example for non-existence. Or Shankara says the horns of a rabbit. This is non-existent. Things that logically cannot exist. This is the category of asat. Or we can say the son of a virgin. The son of a virgin is asat. According to Shankaracharya, you are both a Vedantika and a Christian. So sat and asat, and in between Maya. Maya is something that is in between, and we'll come back to this in-betweenness. For Shankara, this in-betweenness, this madhyastyam, this middleness, enable us to do something with Maya. We can play with Maya. We can create something with Maya, and we can also annul. We can get rid of Maya because it's not existing and not existing. You can say that ontologically, it's not something determined. This is Shankara's Maya. So Kessi Bhattacharya says that even when we realize that Maya is Maya, that it is an illusion, in the sense that I just explained, it does not necessarily disappear. I still see you in the same way that I saw you before, but the value of what I see is changed. The illusion does not disappear. I don't now exist in total darkness. I'm not in a total light. Everything looks the same, but the value is different. This is what KCB is writing. The value changes, but the givenness is using this word givenness is still here before our eyes. Now I'm writing, at this point, I'm reminded of a haiku poem by Kobayashi Issa, who lived in 1763, from 1763 to 1828. Do you know what is a haiku? Haiku is a Japanese classical genre of poetry. So I'm going to read to you a short haiku in English translation. I don't know Japanese, so I cannot read it to you in Japanese. So the haiku says, this dewdrop world. Maybe I have it somewhere here. No. Maybe you can help me to find the haiku. Change the pages until you find the haiku. I closed everything now. 1 minute. Yes, this one, thank you. So the haiku says, I started with 2 paintings. Now I'm reading a poem to you. I'm trying to convince you that interdisciplinarity is an important philosophical characteristic. So the haiku says, this dewdrop world is a dewdrop world, and yet. You know what is dew? This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world, and yet. The translator is Louis Mackenzie. A poem, you must be expecting a logical analysis of KCB. Or maybe you're not expecting anything, but your head of department is expecting a logical analysis of KCB. So let me explain. On the surface, KCB's writing might be seen as penned in a gray, dry, wrapping paper style. I'm quoting from Heinrich Heine's depiction of Kant's philosophy. This is how Heine wrote on Kant, that Kant's writing is gray, dry, something like this. KCB himself, in his introduction to his studies in Vedantism, a work from 1907, suggests that, I'm quoting KCB, a true philosophic system is not to be looked upon as a soulless jointing of hypotheses. Maybe it's also here. Can you find this quote? A true philosophic system is not to be looked upon. No, before. Yes, this one, thank you. A true philosophic system is not to be looked upon as a soulless jointing of hypotheses. It is a living fabric which, with all its endeavor to be objective, must have a well-marked individuality. Hence, it is not to be regarded as the special property of academic philosophy mongers, to be hacked up by them into technical views, but it is to be regarded as a form of life, and is to be treated as the theme of literature of infinite interest to humanity. I think this is quite astounding if you read K.C. Bhattacharya. For him, philosophy should not be dry and soulless, without soul. It should actually be, he says, something lively, which can contribute to humanity. In Swarajyan Ideas, the famous manifesto from 1929, KCB speaks of the colonized mind as prone to producing, I'm quoting him, soulless thinking without a soul. The same phrase used by him here. We can imagine that in his own writing, he aims to overcome the barrier of soullessness in both senses, the colonial and that of quote-unquote academic philosophy mongers. I hope that you are not, and we are not, academic mongers. A monger is a broker, a dealer, a salesperson. This is a serious and unfortunately realistic warning against what the academia is at the danger of becoming. An example for a subtle chord of KCB which resonates the soul under the technical surface can be found in the final lines of his appendix to his studies in Kant, written in the mid-1930s but published only posthumously after he passed away. I told you, no one was interested in an Indian critique of Kant until KCB passed away. So in the appendix he writes, transcendental reflection, thank you for helping me. Transcendental reflection is a form of aesthetic contemplation on the object through which the object is seen as being or having been expressed or bodies forth from within. It is like reflecting on a poem. A philosophical reflection is like reflecting on a poem. Now you understand why I read to you a poem. It is like reflecting on a poem to retrace the steps by which the original formless feeling on the poet's mind came to take its present articulated shape. The final sentence, like reflecting on a poem, is for me astounding. It implies that philosophy, like poetry, bodies forth, this is KCB's articulation, from an original formless feeling on the poet's or the philosopher's mind. It raises the question of the relation between feeling and knowing in KCB. And I'm writing with a question mark. Feeling at the root of knowing? In KC Bhattacharya, you are not shocked because you haven't read KC Bhattacharya. Feeling at the root of knowing? The answer is yes. So before returning to KCB's vocabulary, I will say something about the meaning of feeling in KCB. I want to have another look at the haiku that you already saw. This dewdrop world is a dewdrop world, and yet. Poems I wrote do not need analysis or explanation, unless they are quoted in a philosophical paper, like in my case. For me, this haiku conveys the fragility and the beauty and the briefness of life, like a dewdrop, right? But the heart of the matter is the final line. And yet. We are deeply attached to this dewdrop world, to our dewdrop life, despite its obvious transience. Our whole existence is encapsulated in this phrase, and yet. KCB, I suggested, is interested in the human gaze and its workings. He's interested in the human gaze. He's interested in Maya, not in Brahma. This is what I said previously. When Maya is recognized as such, and its value or status changes from real to unreal, the snake, as KCB puts it, and I told you that he's reinterpreting the snake rope parable, the snake is still, I'm quoting, felt to be given in absolute mockery of thought. We know that it's a rope and not a snake, but we still perceive a snake. We still feel that we stand in front of a snake. The snake was supposed to disappear when one realizes that it had all along been a rope. In the same way, the individual self was supposed to dissolve in the oceanic Brahman. This is another paper which I'm not reaching, which is called, I said, the Advaita and its spiritual significance. It was supposed the individual self to dissolve in the Brahman, and yet, they are still here, the snake, the individual self, the world. Now the question is why and how? So before I answer, in this paper I'm trying to say something about three main concepts of KCB. The first one is demand, the second one is feeling, and the third one is givenness. And when we explain these three concepts, feeling, demand, and givenness, we can understand his reading of the snake rope parable. So this is what I will read to you. Something about these three concepts. I already said twice which concepts. Feeling, this is the third time. Demand, givenness, and then very briefly I'll say something about his reading of the parable, and then I will go, and you will be free to do whatever you want. So demand, let's start with demand. George Birch, a solid scholar of KCB's writings, George Birch, an American philosopher that actually devoted his life to KCB's writings. Our students in Tel Aviv, they call him KC Birch, like KCB. Yeah? So KC Birch or Birch suggests in his introduction to a collection of papers by KCB that he edited, he suggests that Bhattacharya's second favorite word after alternation is demand. And next time you invite me, if you ever invite me, we can speak about alternation. So the second favorite word of KCB after alternation is demand. He quotes from our essay, Shankara's Doctrine of Maya, the sentence which speaks about the demand for absolute certitude, born of the feeling of vanity of life. Gopinath Bhattacharya, which I already mentioned to you, KCB's son and editor, notes in his introduction to KCB's essay, The Concept of Philosophy, that the precise nature, I'm quoting him, of demand is not explicated by the author, by KCB. So KCB doesn't explain what he means when he repeatedly says demand. But if we survey the occurrences of the term demand in KCB's Vedanta writings and his independent essays, and primarily, of course, the subject is freedom from 1930, it becomes clear that the demand, any demand which arises in the mind of a person who feels and sees the vanity of the day in, day out aspect of existence and strives for more, the demand is always related to freedom, namely for KCB to a higher degree of subjectivity and lesser degree of objectivity. Therefore, the demand always involves a measure of inwardizing, getting inwards. This is KC Bhattacharya's own word. At this point, I'm saying it is good to remember that colonialism, despite the word subject in English, the colonized people were subjects of the British Crown. Despite the word subject, colonialism objectifies the colonized human beings. So now I was planning to read to you a very long quote from KCB from the subject on freedom about inwardization, but I'm skipping it because the time is short and I'm not sure about your patience. So I'm jumping to another commentator of Kessi Bhattacharya, named, I don't know if you heard this name, D.P. Chattopadhyay from Jadavpur University, who passed away just a few years ago. Did you ever hear of D.P. Chattopadhyay? I don't. Yes. You heard of D.P. Chattopadhyay? D.P. Chattopadhyay is a very interesting writer to read, and interestingly, D.P. Chattopadhyay was a minister in the Indian ministry. He was how do you call it? A Rajarshi. He was a Raja and the Rishi in one. He was the Minister of Health, the Indian Minister of Health, and at the same time he continued to write philosophy. And later he was the governor of Rajasthan, and at the same time he continued to write philosophy. So philosophy, where is Lucky? Philosophy doesn't exclude, how did you call it? Public services, public administration. So you can be a public administrator, maybe you can go for governor of Rajasthan or something, and at the same time philosophize. So Kessi Bhattacharya, D.P. Chattopadhyay writes on Kessi Bhattacharya. He says, gradual inwardization, gradual, I mean step by step, inwardization of consciousness, or step by step withdrawal from the objective modes of consciousness. I'm skipping the remaining of the quote. Basically, Kessi Bhattacharya speaks about a step-by-step inwardization, going inside, leaving the external objective world. And DPC later continues to write, it is in and through. Another one? Yes. It is in and through. It is in and through its progressive, regressive movements that the introspective self, the self that looks inside, conscious of a demand to know itself as a subject, cognitively goes up, annulling step by step its distinction from the bodily self, the psychic self, and different grades obtained within them. That Krishna that I mentioned to you, that I'm now giving you this, I don't know how do you call it, silsila, this teacher-student, Guru Shishya Parampara. So we started with Kessi Bhattacharya, D.P. Chattopadhyay, now Daya Krishna. Daya Krishna speaks of these progressive, regressive movements of inwardization in terms of identification and de-identification. I identify with something and then I de-identify. And then I identify with something else and then again I de-identify. And I said in the beginning when I spoke about Sankhya philosophy that the process of de-identification, in this process you will find Kaivalya, you will find freedom. So Daya Krishna says that these are movements of identification and de-identification. Now I quote him, where each step in de-identification reveals the earlier identification to have been both voluntary and mistaken. This is from a book by Daya Krishna, which is called The Developments in Indian Philosophy from the 18th century onwards. Where can you find this book? Where can you find Daya Krishna's book, Developments in Indian Philosophy from the 18th century onwards? Now I'm checking if you listen to me carefully. In dayakrishna.org. I was mentioning to you this website. Maybe this is the most important thing that I'm telling you here today. That everything is available online. Forget about me. Just go online and read. I'll say something about demand and feeling, and then I'll say two more things. I think this will be enough. So I'm saying I wish to remind, this I'll skip also. I said something on demand. The demand is demand for freedom. Freedom is the outcome of inwardization. This is very briefly what I said. maybe I'll say two other things and I'll close. As I was reading to you from D.P. Chattopadhyay, D.P. Chattopadhyay was talking about the body. The first identification that KCB is talking about is identification with the body. I'm identified with my body. It can be different types of identification. I can be happy with it, I can be unhappy with it, etc. But KC Bhattacharya is interested in this identification with the body. And what happens when a philosopher is interested in something? He writes about it. He reflects about it. So KC Bhattacharya says, I'm so identified with my body. He makes a distinction between two bodies. One he calls the perceived body, and the other one he calls the felt body. Now this is an interesting distinction. The perceived body and the felt body. Think about yourself for a second. This is what it means to do phenomenology. Let's think about our own experience. Everyone is identified with his body. So what is the difference between the perceived body and the felt body? Is there a distinction between the perceived body and the felt body? When you look in the mirror, are you surprised? Or do you think, oh, okay, this is me? I'm always surprised to see how old I became. I don't know who is this guy with white hair, etc. Because what I feel is different from what I perceive. But for KC Bhattacharya, the perceived body is important because I perceive so little of my body. I don't see anything of my body. I can see only one part of the front side of my body. I can't see my back at all. I can't see, my face. Maybe I have a big nose, so I can see part of my nose. So how can I feel this whole body? How can I feel a self in this body? How can I feel that I'm embodied if I perceive such a little part of this whole body? Now looking in the mirror and taking selfies and all this is not working. You know that it's not working because you can edit. It's not good enough. So basically the only way, and KCB says, the body is not like a building. When I came to the university, I saw only one part of the building. But I can imagine myself going around the building, and this is how I create a three-dimensional picture of a Pondicherry University campus, right? I imagine myself going around. But I cannot imagine myself going around myself. I'm not imagining this. So how come can I perceive my body in its totality? And KCB's other is interesting. He says, only through the other. Only through the other. I know that you see my back. I know that the others see my back. So in a sense, through the other that is rejected, he's speaking about the subject as freedom. I want to go deeply into my own subjecthood. I need the other to become a subject. So I think this is an interesting junction in KC Bhattacharya's philosophy, the necessity of the other in order to perceive myself. Now the question of the self-other is a very interesting philosophical question, not only in Western philosophy, of course contemporary French philosophy. European philosophers are always interested in the other, but of course they don't know how to meet the other. They only talk about meeting the other. They don't know how to meet the other because, again, we are going back to colonialism. Because to meet the other, you need to give up something of yourself. You need to give up authority. You need to give up your thinking habits, right? You need to allow the other to present himself or herself. You need to allow the other to be a subject and not just an object. This is the connection to KCB. I don't know if you. Again, we need Shanta Kumari. What is Shanta Kumari? I don't know if you know. I know that she's retired. I'm joking. I'm trying to make the students a little bit awake for a few seconds. So Shanta Kumari is of course an expert of the Upanishads, and I don't know if you remember the first chapter of the Bhattacharyya Upanishad. The first chapter starts with four creation myths. Of course, Shanta Kumari would tell me these are not myths, these are real whatever. But 4 creation myths, all of them starting with the same phrase. The same phrase, the phrase is Atmai Vedam Agra Asit. In the beginning, in the Agra, there was only the Atman. There was only the self. Right? 4 stories or 4 narratives, if you want. All starting with this sentence, in the beginning was the self. Two of them start with the word Atman and 2 of them start with the word Brahman. In the beginning was the Atman, in the beginning was the Brahman. So if you take the first narrative out of the 4, it goes on to say, the narrative goes on to say, what are the steps of creation? In the beginning there was only the Atman, only the self. And then the first movement of creation is awareness. The Atman was aware of itself. And it said, the Atman said, hey, it's me. And the first thing that was created was the word Aham, right? Aham, me, I. This is the first movement of creation, that suddenly I'm aware of myself and I'm saying, it's me. And then the Upanishad tells the story much more beautifully than me. The Upanishad said, until today, when someone calls me, I'm saying, yes, it's me. And only later I mention my name. And this is so true, right? When we wait for the doctor, someone says, Daniel Raveh. So I'm saying, yes, it's me. Just like the Upanishad. And then I say the remaining of my name. So the first movement of creation is self-awareness. The second movement of creation is what? Fear. We are talking here about the Upanishad, Ragesh, not about Michel Foucault. The second movement of creation is fear. The first self, the Atman, becomes afraid. But then he tells to himself, of what should I be afraid? Because there is no one but me. And the Upanishad says, fear is always fear of the other. Now this is a crucial Upanishadic sentence. When I'm saying we need Shanta Kumari, we really need Shanta Kumari. Fear is always fear of the other. And then the first self, the Atman, gets rid of his fear. Now this sentence, fear is always fear of the other, stands in a sense at the root of colonialism, the fear of the other. And then we go to Jean-Paul Sartre, who said the other is hell, right? In No Exit, in his play No Exit from 1940 something. The other is hell. So in a sense, now I'm telling Shanta Kumari, in the sense the whole of Advaita Vedanta was created to solve the fear of the other. And what is the third step of creation? The third step of creation is that the first self wants to play. And he needs someone to play with. And it's interesting that the same other that he was afraid of just a moment ago is now the other that he has passion. The word is kama. He has passion for. So this Upanishadic narrative starts with self-awareness, fear of the other, and then desire, passion for the other. And this can be actually beautifully connected to Kessi Bhattacharya that speaks about inwardization and at the same time speaks about the need for the other to perceive myself as a whole. And we do perceive ourselves as a whole. I don't think that I'm only half a body, right? I think that I'm a full body. So this is one point that I wanted to mention to you. And now I'm mentioning one last point. I'm jumping to studies in Sankhya philosophy. Now, Kessi Bhattacharya studies in Sankhya philosophy is his commentary, as I told you, to the Sankhya Karika, to this classical text which is called the Sankhya Karika. And the Sankhya Karika begins with a famous verse. Verse 1 of the Sankhya Karika says, let's see if I have the verse here. I'm asking myself if I was really planning to read to you so many pages. I think that I was planning, but of course I'm not doing it. So the first verse of the Sankhya Karika in English translation says, because of the torment of the threefold suffering, there arises the desire to know the means of counteracting it. So does it ring a bell to you? It speaks about the dukkha traya, three types of dukkha, three types of suffering that create the desire to know. And knowledge means freedom. To know is to become free. And the word in Sanskrit here is jigyasa. You want to gain jnana, to get jnana, jigyasa. And if I had time, I would argue, and I can argue whatever you want, because you didn't read Kesi Bhattacharya, so I would argue that actually Kesi Bhattacharya's notion of demand, which I was talking about, is a translation of the Sanskrit notion of jigyasa, the urge to know, the demand, the inner demand to know how to solve the threefold suffering. Now I'm not going to enter the threefold suffering. The Sankhya commentators have their own view about the three types of suffering. You can read Vachaspati Mishra. And then the Buddhists have their own threefold suffering. And then Patanjali of the Yoga Sutra has his own threefold suffering in Yoga Sutra 215, a famous verse of the Yoga Sutra. But Kesi Bhattacharya is saying something different, and with this I will close. Kesi Bhattacharya says that there are two types of desire to get free of pain. To get free of pain. The first type of desire he calls a secular desire to get free of pain. A secular desire means I have a horrible headache. Please give me I don't know, what do you take for a headache? Please give me a painkiller. Please give me what do you take? Paracetamol or whatever. Please give me a painkiller. This is the secular desire to get rid of suffering. But Kesi Bhattacharya says the thing that makes pain a pain is the desire to get free from it. What makes a sensation pain? Whether it is a bodily pain or mental pain. What makes it pain and not just a bodily sensation or mental sensation is my desire to get rid of it. Are you still following? 5 minutes before I'm closing here. What makes pain a pain is the desire to get rid of it. And therefore Kesi Bhattacharya speaks of a higher order desire to get free of pain. And he said that this is the desire to get free from the desire to get free of pain. And I'm looking at your faces and you are not only tired, but you have no clue what I'm talking about. So let me read to you one paragraph and then you follow or you don't follow, and we live with it. So I'm saying the first desire to get free of pain. Listen just 4 minutes more. Yeah, 4 minutes. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. You can count on your phone. 4 minutes. Use a timer. The first desire, which he refers to as, or first wish to get free of pain, which KCB refers to as secular wish, is the wish to be released of the pain. Listen, 3.5 minutes. A painkiller or anesthetic, anything, as long as one's pain is relieved or reduced. The wish, even desperate wish for a painkiller, is born of reflection. First order reflection, ordinary or empirical reflection, KCB calls it, on that bodily, or for that matter, mental sensation. Reflection which validates this sensation as pain. But KCB is not interested in freedom on the surface. And this is true also for Swaraj, not only at the political level, but also at the psychological consciousness level. KCB is not interested, I said, in, where am I? In freedom on the surface. The second deeper wish, which KCB refers to as spiritual wish, is the wish to be released from the wish to be released from pain. The wish to be released from the wish to be released from pain. We saw that without the secular wish, it is not pain. If I don't want to be released from it, it is not pain. but just a bodily sensation or mental whim. Therefore, it makes sense to become free from this wish. In the second spiritual wish, one becomes distant from the body, from the object, even though the body is a unique object, as I told you in KCB. Acquainted by now with KCB's vocabulary just a little bit, we can call this spiritual wish a demand for ultimate freedom. The only difference between secular and spiritual desire for freedom, KCB explains, I'm quoting him, is the difference between freedom from actual pain and freedom from the mind. That is the potentiality of all pain. Again, my paper is too long to read to you. So I'm closing here with the wish to be released from the wish to be released from pain, which is basically the wish to be released from pain, not only here and now empirically, but as a potentiality. And I'm making the connection to colonialism. This was my grand project here. So thank you for listening to whatever you listened, and thank you, ma'am, for inviting me.
For such an insightful lecture and also touching on so many interesting topics. The floor is now open for questions.
Thanks, Daniel, for that wonderful
No talking, please.
lecture. I was actually quite wondering about the notion of this internalizing, that snake, the internalizing of colonialism, and can you just quite elaborate in the sense, like, see, there are other people who also have a critique against the colonialism. For example, Spivaks talk about can subaltern speak. It's all, okay. Okay.
There are other critiques of colonialism, for example,
Spivak can subaltern speak. Right. So how does this? They're also talking about some sense of internalization of West ideas altogether, where the subaltern or the country like India are actually subordinated. Right?
Yeah.
And also Edward Said also talks about the Orientalistic perspective of colonialism in that sense. How does this, from these two accounts, how does this Bhattacharya's notion of this internalizing colonialism will be different?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about knowing that.
Yeah.
That's probably one thing I...
Okay, so I was afraid that no one is going to ask any question, which means that you didn't follow anything. But then Ragesh is saving you here. And he was asking, he said, okay, KCB was offering a critique of colonialism in the form of a snake that was internalized. Actually, didn't have time to develop the snake rope paragraph. The third stage of the snake, when I know that it's a rope, but I still feel a snake. But you understood. So then Ragesh said, but what is the difference between this critique of colonialism? Critique of colonialism that was internalized and other critiques of colonialism. And interestingly, of all the critiques of colonialism, Ragesh was choosing Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. And I don't know if you heard or read of Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. Did you hear about it? Maybe in your classes they hear about Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. You understand that Americans will never be able to say the surname Chakravarti. So she was married to some Spivak many years ago, and she kept the name to enable the Americans to relate to her. I was talking about meeting the other, but the difficulty of meeting the other. I think that one of the difficulties is the names. Can you really pronounce the name of the other? And if you cannot pronounce the name of the other, can't you make the effort to pronounce the name of the other? I think that some people cannot. In this case, she doesn't even expect the Americans to make this effort to go toward the other. So it's interesting that you mentioned Gayatri Spivak, because in a sense, Gayatri Spivak is influenced by Casey Bhattacharya. Gayatri Spivak that finished her BA at the Presidency College and only later went to the United States and started to read Derrida and your guys. So I think that Gayatri Spivak is certainly aware of Swarajin ideas. She was taught Swarajin ideas in college. So in this respect, I think that Casey Bhattacharya was giving an inspiration in several ways. As I was telling the guys in the car that brought me from Pondicherry, in 1929, when he gave the talk Swarajin ideas, it was difficult to imagine a situation of an independent India. And Casey Bhattacharya not only envisioned independence, but he also realized that political independence is not enough. That something deeper, I was saying he doesn't want to stay on the surface, something deeper is needed. And then I'll say something about Gayatri Spivak, even though probably you know her work better than me. So Gayatri Spivak became famous with this article which is called Can the Subaltern Speak? Which was published in several versions, which is interesting. Apropos different drafts, think of Shir Obindo, how many drafts he wrote for everything, and all of them are interesting, not only the last quote-unquote product. So the question is whether the subaltern can speak. So do you know what the subaltern is? Of course, if you take Ragesh's classes, you know what the subaltern is. What is the subaltern? What is this word subaltern? You just said yes when I said, do you know what is a subaltern? So the subaltern is actually a rank in the British Army. It's the rank below all the ranks, right? The peon who is making chai for the officers is a subaltern. So this word was extracted from this military vocabulary and used to denote those who don't have a voice, the voiceless, how should we call them? The voiceless. If you take a walk on the boardwalk in Pondicherry early in the morning, you see that people leave water for street dogs, and on these water small tanks it says the voice for the voiceless. The dogs, the street dogs, don't have a voice, so someone is leaving water to them. So when Gayatri Spivak writes this article, and again you can read it, I think this is the most important thing that I want to tell you here today. You can read everything. You don't need Ragesh to explain to you or me to explain to you. You can open this article and read it and understand what you understand. And later you can read it next year and understand some more. So when she says, can the subaltern speak, what does she mean? She doesn't ask whether we have the ears to listen to the subaltern. The subaltern can be the colonized Indians during the colonialism. The subaltern can be women in a patriarchal society. The subaltern can be Dalits in a castean society. The subaltern can be different things. The subaltern are the weakened part of the society. I'm not saying the weak. The weakened, those who are getting weakened by the other stronger parts of the society. So she doesn't ask if we have the ears to listen to them. She asks whether they can speak. And what is the meaning of this question? The meaning of the question is, in which language can they speak? Are they going to speak in English? This is the language of the colonizer. Are they going to speak in Sanskrit? This is the language of the Brahmins, which are a different type of colonizers. I hope that it's okay that I'm saying something like this here. But I'm only talking to Ragesh, not to all of you. So when I'm saying the Brahmins are different type of colonizers. So do I want to use the Brahmins language? The idea is that if the subaltern will use a different language than his own, he will no longer be a subaltern, right? So I think that this is a very interesting question regarding finding one's own voice. And this question is relevant to all of you. If you want to have a voice of your own, if you don't want just to repeat that which was already said, if you want to think independently. You were talking to me about Sundar Sarukar. Sundar Sarukar in 2016, when I was on a sabbatical in JNU, gave a talk which was called The Freedom to Think. So I'm telling you, you are free to think. Are you really free to think? You are, of course, bound by so many things. And the first thing that you are bound by is not politics, is not, I don't know what, is language. We are bound by language. This is what I was saying when I was referring to Kessi Bhattacharya's distinction between speaking and thinking. So I think that from all the different critiques of colonialism, you chose a critique which is in a sense taking Kessi Bhattacharya forward. You could have chose other critiques. You could have chosen, for example, Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon is a very different example for someone who wants to reject colonialism, and he thinks that violence is needed. So we can create a dialogue here between Kessi Bhattacharya, Gandhi, the non-violence proponent, and Frantz Fanon. I don't know if you read Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon was a French thinker from an Algerian origin. He studied medicine and he became a psychiatrist. And then he was sent to Algeria by the French government to diagnose mental diseases in Algeria. And Frantz Fanon wrote 2 books. And he said the whole of Algeria is sick, is mentally sick. And you know what the name of the sickness is? Ragesh. The name of the sickness is colonialism. So he said, I didn't find one potential patient. The whole nation is sick. And I think that it's really interesting, not only to, and he was, by the way, a student of Jean-Paul Sartre. So then you can find Sartrean echoes in Frantz Fanon's writings. But yeah, Frantz Fanon is a far more straightforward political thinker than Kessi Bhattacharya, which still had one foot deeply rooted in the tradition. He was a Sanskritist. He was raised in the Sanskrit tradition. So in Kessi Bhattacharya, it is more subtle, and then it's a matter of your philosophical temperament. Do you like straightforward arguments, or do you prefer subtle arguments? In my case, of course, the subtle argument. I mean, when I'm saying straightforward, I think about someone like Nietzsche that throws a bomb every sentence that he's writing. Yes, sir. What do you think about what I say? Say something.
No, I do not really wanted to comment on that, like regarding the notion of the colonialism, in what sense we are talking about between Spivak and from Bhattacharya onwards. But I wanted to make one thing to be clear is that, see, there is a colonialism, by definitions, it's about something between the self and the other, if we can reduce that entire discourse into a particular way, because within India itself there is another sense of colonialism still persists. For example, Gopal Guru, in his famous essay, was actually talking about Indian social academia have this sense of colonial attitudes towards certain member of their own scholars, particularly who are marginalized. Okay, so in that sense, how do we really capture the notion of colonialism? Still a question. It's not between whether it is from west or east or within. I feel like this is a question of primarily, fundamentally between the self and the other. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just proposing it.
Yeah.
That's one thing I would like to comment on it. And there is another question I had in mind actually. The question of demand,
Yeah.
right? So how does this within the givenness? how do you actually connect this notion of demand with the concept of freedom? I just want to know.
Yeah.
I'm a bit curious.
Just yeah, I want to add the first question.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you said that France finance way, like colonialism, mentally the social is sick because colonialism. Can we say the same way in Indian context? So the Indian society is a sick, right, because of Hindutva or Hindu religion, the same way, right? So this is the first one I want to add because here the people are sick, mentally sick because of Hinduism. As he rightly pointed out, there are many marginalization. That one question I want to add with Rakesh. That one, the first question. I think I have some of the questions to you.
Let me answer, then I'll give you my
Okay,
comment,
fine.
because I will
Yes.
forget.
Okay.
Yeah. So, regarding Hindutva, I'm not saying anything because I don't know. Don't forget that I don't know if you saw this movie.
No, the
What's the name of
the Suraj concept of Suraj?
Yeah, there was this Rajkumar Irani movie, PK, that he landed in India with other. So I'm actually a PK. So I don't want to I don't want to say something that I'm not an expert of. In the same sense that so many people have so many views about Israel and Palestine today, and whenever I come, people tell me, I think that this is the case or that is the case. And in many cases, I feel that they are not well informed, but already they have a view about something that they are not well informed about. So this is I'm not afraid to give my opinion. I'm not well informed. This is why I'm not answering this question. Regarding Ragesh's two questions, we started with no questions and now we have too many questions, but all of them by almost the same person, by two people. The first question, you cannot go back to a situation before colonialism. We cannot say colonialism was bad, let's go back. There was this Muslim rule, so let's go even further back. And then we can go even further back. And then we can go, this is not possible. Decolonization is not to go back. Decolonization is to go forward. And to go forward is to deal with the impact of colonialism. And Casey Bhattacharya says the Britishers brought European education. We wanted European education. This European education did not fall on unwilling ears. It fell on willing ears. So then Casey Bhattacharya says we have to pick and choose. And your own guru, Raghuram Raju, says he has this beautiful book which is called Bending Western Philosophy for India. You should invite Raghu to give a talk in this department. Bending Western Philosophy for India. Now, actually, the problem is that when you're a good scholar like Raghuram Raju and you want to publish with the Oxford University Press, they changed his title. Actually, the book came out under the title Calibrating Western Philosophy for India. But calibrating and bending are not the same thing. Luckily, he sent me the manuscript before it was published, so I know his working title. So, Bending Western Philosophy for India. Raghuram Raju says this notion of bending is important because when you bend something for your own purposes, he said, let's use Western philosophy. Let's not admire Western philosophy. Let's not reject Western philosophy. Apropos Casey Bhattacharya's picking and choosing, he says, let's bend it for our purposes. But then he says, bending is a tricky thing because if you bend too much, it will break. So you need to find the right proportion of bending something for your own purposes. And if you look at the book, if you look at Calibrating Western Philosophy for India, you will see he's trying to do it to a series of thinkers. I don't remember whom, Rousseau and Derrida, and the last one is Vadedra Chandidas. Who is Vadedra? But Raghuram Raju is a trickster. So he's saying Rousseau, Derrida, Deleuze and Guattari, and Vadedra Chandidas. Vadedra Chandidas is a Telugu thinker. So Raghu thinks that even we have to bring into the picture You can say contemporary thinkers that wrote in contemporary Indian language, like Telugu. So regarding going back, you cannot go back, but you can try to find a method of picking and choosing. This is K.C. Bhattacharya's articulation, or finding the right method of bending. This is Raghuram Raju's articulation. And it's not easy, but nothing is easy. It's like I'm taking a shower in the morning. I'm staying in the ashram, in Shri Aurobindo's ashram. So I'm trying to find the right balance between hot water and cold water. It's not easy. It's a new challenge every morning. So I think that this picking and choosing is the same type of challenge. Sometimes maybe this is too much, and then we have to add more from this. So this is your first question. The second question was about demand. Demand and givenness, yeah. So I didn't speak enough about demand, but I didn't really read my paper, right? So I think that demand for K.C. Bhattacharya, I connected demand to freedom. But demand is, in KCB, is something that doesn't leave you alone. Something is bothering my mind. I want to think about other things. I'm busy with other things, but it doesn't leave my mind. It demands, or it even forces me to go back to it until I find a certain solution. And now I'm connecting it to givenness. So the notion of givenness is a central notion in Husserl. Now, K.C. Bhattacharya, we don't know if he read Husserl or not. We think that he did. Some people even think that they know what, because he doesn't tell us what he read. It was not the academia of today that you are putting a footnote with page number or something like this. So Husserl is using the notion of givenness, but the notion of givenness is coming from Kant, of course. And Kant is using the Latin term datum. Datum means data, that which is literally given. So the question is, what are we doing with that which is given? So for K.C. Bhattacharya, that is reading Kant and possibly Husserl as well, the idea is that perception, or the sense perception, has access to the givenness. But the mind, thinking, is distorting the givenness. So he's making this distinction between the direct perception and the mind, which is mind and memory. He's talking also about memory, which is doing something, which is processing the givenness. And then he's using this example of becoming free from illusion. So if you see two moons in the sky, this is an example by Shankaracharya. If you see two moons instead of one, what does it mean? Suppose yesterday evening I saw two moons instead of one. So do I really believe that there are two moons in the sky? No, I don't. So how come I saw two moons? Because I was drinking too much. I was not drinking. This is just an example. So I know that I was drinking, and now I see, but I know that there is one moon, but I see two moons. So the question is about perception and knowledge. And for K.C. Bhattacharya, and this I started to say, but I didn't have time to read the paper, because some people I thought were becoming impatient because it takes too much time. But for some reason you are awakened again in the Q&A. Maybe the chai and the water works. So I think that for K.C. Bhattacharya it is the feeling. Now we call it affect. Maya, we still see the Maya. It does not disappear because it affects us. The affect is giving us the affect makes something more real than what is really real. The really real for K.C. Bhattacharya in this case is the Brahman. But the Maya is stronger than the Brahman because of its affect. But then it sounds like such a new reading of classical Vedanta. But then if you read Shankaracharya, or if you read contemporary commentators like KCB and Shri Aurobindo, but even the word Maya, you know what is Maya. It is part of your own languages. You know that Maya is powerful. Maya means the power of creation. Maya is not just illusion. Maya is what we, because we create the world that we live in every moment anew. And we create it with our gaze, in the way we see. And this again works wonderfully for KCV, both as a commentator of classical Vedanta and as a political philosopher. Because even politically, we create a reality according to our own eyes. If we look differently, we change the reality that we live in. So I think that Dr. Indira is signaling that it's time to close. So if you want to come and ask me something, it will be my pleasure. So thank you so much for giving me so much time. You want to ask me? Come and ask me here. No? You want to ask me for
Hello. It's a simple question. You are discussing about identification and re-identification and the phenomenological perspective. I think when we are teaching about P.F. Strawson, the descriptive metaphysics, so the same thing he discussed, right? Identification and re-identification. But when you highlighted that the phenomenological perspective. So here is a metaphysics. So what's your intervention? See, comparing these two things, almost it seems that similar way, because he also talks about person, body, right, sound, the same way, but is a metaphysical aspect.
You're talking about Peter Strawson.
Yes, Strawson, P.F. Strawson. Yeah. So this is the one thing I want to. And the second thing is that when you talk about this Swaraj, the Bhattacharyya, K.C. Bhattacharya Swaraj. So when we are teaching this Ambedkarian philosophy, so he has a problem with, like, who's the Swaraj, it has been discussed here in Indian context. So he has given a lot of critique and also given that the proof, the empirical proof. It's not a Swaraj for all the people, right? It's only particular sect of the people it does. So the concept of like a Swaraj, which you highlighted, so without discussing the various other thing, simply that whose Swaraj it does, because again and again you are quoting Aravindo, the Bhattacharya. That time already that Tilak, this guy, Aravindo, all these people like the Hindu extremists, they wanted to establish Hindu nationalism. That So again, when Gandhi itself, when he introduced this Swaraj concept, so I felt that. So without discuss, when you're comparing the colonialism and again highlighting this Swaraj, again the ignoring the other part, then you are just discussing with some other thing. So there is a gap, without addressing the inclusive level or the larger level. That it been that is my what I want to listen. That second thing, I think limit, because I want to ask Dayakrishna. I worked something on that. There's two things is enough.
What's your name?
My name is Vel Murugan. Vel Murugan. Vel, V-E-L.
Okay. So I thought that we were already closing, but this guy asked me really good questions here. So I'll give you two easy answers for difficult questions, and then I'll say something more about Hindu extremism that you are asking me second time. So the easy answers is, first of all, you ask about Peter Strawson. So one of Peter Strawson's students is a very interesting Indian philosophy called Arindam Chakrabarti. Arindam Chakrabarti, I think that in his own writings, is trying to make the connection between Peter Strawson and Indian philosophy. And interestingly, knowing Arindam and reading Arindam Chakrabarti, and reading Strawson, Peter Strawson was interested in Indian philosophy. Not many Western philosophers are interested in Indian philosophy. Not many Western philosophers are open to other philosophies other than European philosophy. Take, for example, Derrida. Derrida was so close to Gayatri Spivak, and he doesn't say a word about any philosophy other than European philosophy. So I think that Strawson is trying to build bridges to other philosophies other than European philosophy. And apropos the notions that you mentioned, it's good to read Arindam Chakrabarti on Peter Strawson. Almost in every paper of Arinam he mentions Strawson, and in many of his, you can read Arinam's paper on Casey Bhattacharya in a book that I edited. He starts with KCB and he ends with Peter Strawson. Send me a mail and I send, or you can download it easily, but I can send you if you want the manuscript. The second question was a good question because it was raising a question mark about Casey Bhattacharya's Swaraj, and even better than this, it was actually posing a question mark about my own interest in Casey Bhattacharya's about Swaraj, because it was implied that perhaps as an outsider I'm fascinated by KCB's Swaraj, which for me is I don't know, exotic or something like this, and I don't understand the deep political implications. So in this respect, I will give again an easy answer to a difficult question. Easy in the sense that I'm telling you to read something. So I told you read Peter Strawson, read Arintam Chakrabarti. And now regarding the second question, I don't know if you're aware of a special issue, special volume of the Indian Philosophical Quarterly, a philosophical journal that was quite significant in India, but unfortunately died some years back. It was published by the Department of Philosophy in Pune University, and in 1984, why 1984? Everybody was celebrating 75 years to Hind Swaraj. So in this journal, they celebrated Hind Swaraj via Casey Bhattacharya's Swarajian ideas. So it's a special volume on Swarajian ideas. It is available online, and you have a series of thinkers that are criticizing Casey Bhattacharya's notion of Swaraj. You can take, for example, Rajendra Prasad. I don't know if you know this philosopher. Rajendra Prasad, nowadays he's quite old, based maybe somewhere in Bihar after retirement. So Rajendra Prasad is criticizing this Casey Bhattacharya's Swaraj. He says Casey Bhattacharya wants to go back to the tradition. He says, but which tradition? He says there are many traditions in India. So he says when KCB is talking about the tradition, he's actually talking about the Brahminical tradition. And he says the Brahminical tradition can be more oppressive than the British colonialism, something like this. So I think that this is a good point. And then you take other writers and they say, let's broaden the scope of Indianness. In the same volume, they say, why do we always talk about the same regions in North India? Why don't we talk about South India? Why don't we talk about the Northeast? Why don't we add different Indias to this talk about Indian philosophy? So I think that this is a very good question, and you will find very good answers in this volume of edited, by the way, by Ramchandra Gandhi, who is another very interesting commentators of the notion of Swaraj. The last book of Ramchandra Gandhi, the grandson of the famous Mahatma, is called Swaraj, 2002. It was published in a very small edition in Delhi by an art gallery. So it's a dialogue with the Mahatma on the one side, and with painter Tayyab Mehta. I started with paintings. So he's trying to get into a dialogue with art. He thinks that in art, through art, you can find what I referred to previously as your own voice. So this is another interesting reference. Ramchandra, and of course nowadays no one touches Ramchandra Gandhi because of the political affiliation or something like this. But I have some privilege as an outsider to touch whoever I want. When I go to JNU, people tell me, oh no, not to talk about Ramchandra Gandhi or something like this. So this is the privilege of the outsider. And the last thing that I want to say, I don't read Sri Aurobindo as a Hindu nationalist. I've been reading Sri Aurobindo for many years. Actually, my own teacher, one of my teachers, Mukund Lart, originally from Calcutta, who studied philosophy from Sri Anirvan. Sri Anirvan is the translator of the Life Divine into Bengali. So I belong to this tradition, to Mukund Lart and Anirvan and Sri Anirvan and Sri Aurobindo. So I know that Shua Robindo, and by the way, also Casey Bhattacharya, are quote unquote recruited by current political forces. I was searching for Swarajian ideas when I was going to Jadavpur to give a talk. So I wrote Swarajian ideas in Google. And the first result was the website of BJP. So does it mean that I should not read Swarajian ideas? Of course, this is not what it means. I'm not interested in current party politics. I'm interested in free thinking. And free thinking, and I'm not Indian, and I'm not trying to be Indian. For me, colonialism goes far beyond the Indian political situation under the Britishers and today. I'm interested in free thinking. This is what I'm trying to think about and to write about. So I don't agree to categorize Shua Robindo as a national extremist, even though maybe you have good reasons to do it yourself. Again, it is difficult because what I was trying to do here today is to find a political KCB, not only in Swarajian ideas, but in his other writings. And then you can do the same thing about Shua Robindo. Some people will say, okay, the political Shua Robindo is only Bande Mataram and the Karma Yogin, the time that he was in Calcutta. But again, you can try to do what I did with KCB with the Shua Robindo, and to find political strands of Shua Robindo even during his Pondicherry time, even in his Arya time. And I think that it's interesting to try to do it. I don't think that the political KCB stayed. I don't buy this narrative that the political Aurobindo stayed in Calcutta and a new spiritual Aurobindo was born in Pondicherry. I think that Shua Robindo, just like KCB, is far more complex, and complexity is interesting philosophically. So thank you for demanding answers for these two questions. So let's go to eat something. No, you want to stay longer? You wanted to ask something? Come and ask something. Yes.
You just students 1:30 they have class. That is why the
So come and talk to me when everyone is going somewhere else. Thank you again. Thank you once again to all of you. Come. Really send me. Take my email.
I would like to call Dr. N. Bobby for the vote of thanks.
So it's really a very time for the lunch also. So sorry for really. I'm really happy to stand here to propose this sort of thanks. It's a very important occasion, which is ICPR has been sponsored periodic lecture, and first and foremost, I really wanted to express my sincere and heartful gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Professor Daniel Raveh, all the way from Israel, and we are really happy, sir, for your efforts and coming here and sharing a insightful lecture, and you really opened our new definitions and new understanding. And what we have thought is entirely different from the approach that you have given us, and the clarity and the truly enriched knowledge is actually great that to hear us from you, to hear from you. So and also I wanted to thank the ICPR, who sponsored, which gave this opportunity, to have a periodic lecture. And I really want to extend my respectful thanks to Dr. S. Indra ma'am, Department of Head and Department of Philosophy, for giving this opportunity and encouragement to organize this event successfully. And this is a great time for us to hear something different from our regular classes as well, isn't it? So at the same time, I wanted to thank our Dr. Raveh Murugan sir, and at the same time, I wanted to thank our fellow faculty members, Dr. Ragesh and Mobashir, and also Father Jonas to be present here. and giving a great support to dedicate this all these efforts to make this program successful. And I really wanted to thank all the scholars and the students who are present here, who worked indirectly and to make this program very successful, and for your patient listening and very insightful questions that you are having. And I really wanted to thank once again Dr. Professor Daniel Raveh for contribution, and who made these things completely successful. And in one word, I wanted to finish, which is that Toda Lekha. I don't know. Thank you.